We are experiencing a very shocking and challenging time in history at the moment, and this story is about another time in history when something extraordinary happened.
Talking and walking, walking and talking. Gosh, I feel really worn out after all that exercise.
Exercise? You feel worn out after brushing your teeth. Not that you do that very often.
Very funny, Rosie. But either way, I would have caught a bus to Emmaus, not walk for 3 hours. My favourite are double-decker buses.
Bus. The only bus you would have got in those days would have had two humps and smelly breath.
Come on, you two. You're not arguing again, are you?
It's that daft brother of mine. He reckons he would have caught a bus to Emmaus. I told him that things were a bit different back in the old days when you were young.
Not so much of the cheek, Rosie. But yes, things were very different when Jesus talked with the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. Can you imagine? There were no cars or buses, no computers, no social media, and even no screens. Not even smartphones.
No mobile phones. It must have been very boring then.
Boring? Far from it, Daniel. The most exciting events in history were taking place at that time, and people were in a state of absolute shock. Jesus had just been crucified, but news was spreading that he'd been seen alive and well.
How did people know this had happened if there was no social media and no news?
News was spread by word of mouth in those days, but even then it could spread very quickly.
They must have been very confused to hear that Jesus was alive again.
Yes, indeed. Many of Jesus' followers had expected him to lead a rebellion against the Roman soldiers and lead the Jews into freedom.
Yeah, that's right. He was going to beat them up and throw them to the lions. Man, I like all that blood and gore.
Blood and gore. You almost fainted last time you cut your finger.
Well, you can imagine how disappointed they were when Jesus allowed himself to be captured and crucified. All their dreams must have flown out of the window. And they must have been absolutely dismayed. Just think how you'd feel if your superhero, who you thought was invincible, was suddenly killed off.
But they must have been really excited if they'd heard that Jesus was alive.
Yes, that's all they could talk about as they walked along the road to Emmaus. And they shared all the gossip with Jesus when he joined them on their journey.
But I can't understand why they didn't recognize Jesus. If I bumped into my superhero on the way to Falkirk, I'd recognize him straight away.
Yes, that is strange, Daniel. But the Bible says that they were prevented from seeing him. Maybe it was their lack of faith that blinded them.
Lack of faith? I thought that they were Jesus' disciples and believed him.
They were disciples, but even after all Jesus' teachings, they still didn't understand. They just didn't get it.
That's a bit like Rosie's maths and science. She just doesn't get that.
I think that Jesus must have despaired of his disciples at sometimes. But even on this journey to Emmaus, he continued to explain how the past events had been prophesied in the Bible, and that they should not have been surprised or shocked at the things that had happened.
Did they understand then?
Well, not really, but when they reached Emmaus, they were so engrossed that they invited Jesus in for supper, rather than let him continue his separate way.
They must have been dead hungry after walking all that way. I get hungry just thinking about food.
That's all you ever do think about, Daniel.
Well, yes, I expect they were hungry, both for food and more teachings. But it was at this point, when Jesus had prepared the bread and prayed, that the penny dropped, and the disciples suddenly realised who they'd been talking to.
That was incredible. What happened next, Karen?
Well, the disciples were both amazed and shocked, because at this point Jesus disappeared and left them on their own again. But they were incredibly excited and wanted to share their news.
So, don't tell me they talked and walked and talked all the way back.
Well, actually, they ran and skipped with joy. They couldn't wait to get back.
Well, I still would have got a bus or even a taxi.